Welcome back to Deca Facts. Today we're counting down 10 immigration laws and executive actions that changed the course of U.S. history, and exploring how the presidents behind them helped define what it means to be American. Let's begin. 10. Immigration Act of 1917. Our story begins in the final years of President Woodrow Wilson's administration. Congress passed a sweeping immigration law that created a literacy test for adult immigrants and banned virtually all immigration from a newly defined Asiatic barred zone. It was one of the most exclusionary policies up to that point. Wilson vetoed it, warning that it was too harsh and would turn away capable immigrants. But Congress overrode him. Fear of the wrong kinds of newcomers was stronger than presidential restraint. 9. Immigration Act of 1924. If 1917 was the door beginning to close, 1924 slammed it shut. Signed into law by President Calvin Coolidge, the 1924 Immigration Act introduced strict national origin quotas based on the 1890 census. The goal was to preserve America's Anglo-Saxon character by limiting Southern and Eastern European immigration and banning almost all immigration from Asia. Coolidge didn't just sign it, he supported it fully. He once said, "America must be kept American." The law would remain in place for over 4 decades, profoundly shaping who could come and who couldn't. 8. McCarran-Walter Act, 1952. Fast forward to the Cold War. Communism was the new fear. Congress passed the McCarran-Walter Act to keep suspected radicals and communists out. It also gave the government power to deport immigrants based on ideology, not just crimes. President Harry S. Truman vetoed the bill, calling it discriminatory and un-American. But again, Congress overrode him. Interestingly, the act also allowed Asian immigrants to become naturalized U.S. citizens for the first time, a major milestone hidden inside an otherwise repressive law. 7. Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. After years of exclusion and quotas, President Lyndon B. Johnson led the charge for a better system. In 1965, under the banner of civil rights, Johnson signed a law that abolished the old racial quotas and replaced them with preferences for family reunification and skilled workers. He signed it at the base of the Statue of Liberty, calling the old system un-American in the highest sense. The 1965 Act opened the doors to immigrants from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. It's why today's America looks the way it does. Johnson saw it as a correction and a promise. 6. Refugee Act of 1980. In the aftermath of the Vietnam War and growing global refugee crises, President Jimmy Carter pushed for a consistent, humane way to resettle refugees. The Refugee Act created a permanent process for accepting people fleeing persecution and aligned U.S. policy with international standards. Carter strongly supported it, viewing America as a sanctuary for the oppressed. The law remains the foundation of U.S. refugee policy to this day. 5. Immigration Reform and Control Act, IRCA, of 1986. President Ronald Reagan, often remembered for his tough stance on the Cold War, actually signed one of the most compassionate immigration laws in modern history. IRCA was a compromise. Tougher penalties for employers who hired undocumented workers, combined with a one-time amnesty for those already in the U.S. illegally. Nearly 3 million people gained legal status under the law. Reagan believed it was the decent thing to do. In his words, "We are and always will be a nation of immigrants." 4. Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, 1996. In a time of rising concern about illegal immigration, President Bill Clinton signed a law that dramatically expanded the government's power to detain and deport non-citizens. The 1996 Act introduced harsh penalties, including the 3- and 10-year bars that punished undocumented immigrants for unlawful presence, even if they were trying to fix their status. Clinton supported the bill as part of his broader tough-on-crime image. Years later, many would argue it created the infrastructure for mass deportations we see today. 3. Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, 2012. By 2012, immigration reform was stalled in Congress. President Barack Obama took matters into his own hands. With DACA, he used executive action to shield hundreds of thousands of undocumented young people, those brought to the U.S. as children, from deportation. Obama called it a temporary measure, not a substitute for legislation. But for over 800,000 dreamers, it meant jobs, education, and the ability to live without fear. The courts would later challenge it, but its legacy remains powerful for a generation of immigrants. 2. Zero Tolerance Policy, 2018. Immigration took an opposite turn in 2018 under President Donald Trump. His administration rolled out a zero-tolerance policy that criminally prosecuted all adults crossing the border illegally. including asylum seekers. The result was family separation. Thousands of children were taken from their parents, often with no clear path to reunification. Trump defended the policy as enforcing the law. But public outrage, national and international, forced the administration to backtrack. Still, its impact on U.S. immigration discourse was seismic. 1. Executive Orders on Immigration Enforcement, 2021 to 2025. President Joe Biden entered office promising to reverse many of Trump's policies. Through a series of executive orders, he ended the Muslim travel ban, resumed efforts to reunite separated families, and reshaped deportation priorities to focus on violent offenders. These actions didn't create new laws, but they marked a return to a more compassionate approach to immigration. Biden framed immigration as a reflection of American values, though he faced intense criticism from both the left and the right. From exclusion to inclusion, quotas to compassion, these 10 policies didn't just shape immigration, they shaped America itself. Every president on this list made a choice. Some fought to open the door, others chose to close it. And all of them left behind a legacy written in policy, lived out by millions. This is DecaFacts. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Which president's immigration policy had the biggest impact and why? Thanks for watching. See you in the next countdown.